Japan has been the top of my travel bucket list for as long as I can remember. For Lunar New Year, our team was given a few days off, so I decided to take a spontaneous trip to Tokyo. And one of the biggest perks of playing overseas in Taiwan is how easy it is to travel to nearby countries. With Japan just a few hours away, I knew this would be a rare opportunity. I landed in Japan at 2 a.m. and I knew I had to get some food. And one of the best things about Japan is that ramen spots are open 24/7. And ramen has always been my favorite food, so of course, my first stop had to be a late night bowl. It was the perfect way to start the trip. I spent the next morning just walking around and taking in the area. There's something about the vibe in Japan. Everything feels so lively, but also super organized. Every little detail from the streets to the architecture just feels different from anywhere else I've been. And of course, I had to grab something to eat before heading out. Japan has some of the best food spots on every corner, so it's hard to go wrong with any choice. Getting around in Japan is so convenient. I decided to take the public transportation and it was pretty intimidating at first, but it's similar to the one they have in Taiwan. I hopped on the train and made my way to Harajuku, one of the most famous shopping districts in Tokyo. Harajuku is known for its streetwear, vintage shops, and just overall crazy fashion. And one of my first stops was Jam, which is one of the biggest thrift stores in Japan. The selection was insane and it was pretty intimidating as well. But after that, I hit up Bape and picked up a shirt, then checked out some other stores like Supreme, Stüssy, and a bunch of other well-known spots. But if you're into fashion and streetwear, Japan is definitely somewhere you need to go at some point. And after all that shopping, I had to get some food again. And this time I went to a Gyukatsu spot, which is beef katsu. It was my first time trying it and it did not disappoint. The meat was super crispy on the outside, but also super tender. And it's definitely a must-try if you're in Japan. And next up was Shibuya, one of the busiest and most famous areas in Tokyo. And of course, I had to walk through the Shibuya Crossing. Seeing it in person was surreal. It's one of those places you see in movies, but being there in real life and walking through it was a crazy experience. Later on, I went to Udon Shin, a super popular spot known for their handmade noodles and tempura. I got their carbonara udon with fried bacon, and it was easily one of the best udon dishes I've ever had. I was still hungry after that, so I walked to a nearby ramen spot. At this point, I lost count of how many bowls of noodles I had, but honestly, in Japan, you can never have too much ramen. The next morning, I started my day at a sushi, donburi, and onigiri restaurant. And sushi for breakfast is pretty unusual, but when you're in Japan, it just felt right. After breakfast, I took the train to Ginza. I didn't really have a plan, just wanted to walk around and explore the area, and ended up grabbing some katsu curry for lunch. For dessert, I went to a place called Age 3, which is all over Instagram. They're famous for their deep fried sandwich, so of course I had to try it. It actually lived up to the hype, crispy on the outside and not too sweet. I would definitely recommend if you're making a trip to Tokyo. But traveling alone is a different experience. You get to move at your own pace, do exactly what you want, and take everything in without any distractions. But at the same time, there are many moments where you wish you had someone to share it with. Either way, solo traveling is something I think everyone should experience at least once. Later that night, I went to Tokyo Tower and waited under it for about an hour, expecting it to light up like I saw all over Instagram. But for my last dinner in Japan, I went back to Ginza for an Omakase dinner, and this was hands down the best sushi I've ever had. And just like that, my trip to Japan was over. It was a great experience finally getting to visit a place I've always dreamed of, but honestly, 2 days wasn't enough. From the food to the culture to just exploring the city, there's so much more I want to see. It's definitely not my last time here. But next time I'm staying way longer. But for now, I go back to Taiwan.